While there were a lot of great LEGO Star Wars sets, minifigures and even GWPs in 2025, there were a lot of disappointments as well, and with that, welcome to today's topic of the biggest LEGO Star Wars disappointments of this very year 2025. Of course, everything in this video is just my opinion, and I also want to point out that I think we had a lot of great stuff this year. I'd say in general this was a pretty great year for LEGO Star Wars, but I thought this would be an interesting topic for a video, and maybe the critique leads to some improvement, which would of course be pretty neat. But now let's start with the first disappointment of the year, and that is of course the 10-year anniversary of The Force Awakens, or let's better say the lack of it. In total, LEGO gave us 2 sets and not a singular minifigure for the 10th anniversary of Episode 7, which is not a lot, but you could argue that LEGO usually doesn't care that much about anniversaries. But while we also didn't get specific Rod's anniversary sets, we at least got a bunch of clones / Order 66 scenes, which was pretty cool. And in general, sequel fans didn't get all too many things from that era in the last couple of years, so I guess a lot of people had some hopes for this anniversary. Despite this year being the 10th anniversary, The Force Awakens didn't really get much love, with only 2 sets being set number 75415 Kylo Ren's helmet and set number 75406 Kylo Ren's command shuttle. The prices for these sets were very high, with the helmet having 529 pieces for a $70 price tag, which means 13.2 cents per piece, and the command shuttle having 386 pieces for yet again $70, which means a price per piece of 18.1 cents, which is pretty insane. Looks-wise, both sets are solid, but the fact that fans of the sequels didn't get a singular minifigure and only 2 pretty overpriced sets from The Force Awakens is pretty sad, and I do think fans of that movie deserve better. Personally, I'm not a sequel fan myself, but with the amount of clone sets, I think Episode 7 fans could have easily gotten something better this year, and maybe at least a single minifigure from The Force Awakens. Staying on topic with minifigs, one of the biggest missed opportunities from this year was the non-existent minifigure in the set 75407 Brick Build Star Wars logo. As I already said in my review or in the 10 characters we need video, I think this was the opportunity to give us a George Lucas minifigure, and I honestly can't really understand why they didn't include him. Maybe they are saving George for the 50th anniversary of Star Wars in 2027, but for years LEGO fans, including me, have been wanting a minifigure of the Star Wars creator, and I think this would have been the best opportunity for LEGO to do so. Maybe George Lucas himself doesn't want something like that to exist, which I honestly doubt is the case, and that's why I was super disappointed when it got revealed and this set had 0 included minifigures. I mean, a GWP of him would be neat as well, but come on, the Star Wars logo was the perfect opportunity, right? Chipping out on minifigures is never a great idea, and if you include a head for a figure, you should in my opinion include the rest of the body as well, but I guess that is just my way of thinking. In set number 75400 Plo Koon's Jedi Starfighter Microfighter, LEGO included, well, of course Plo Koon himself, but they also included the headpiece for his Astromech R7D4, who we already got in a 2010 playset. However, they chose to neither include the body nor the legs, so he is doomed to stay on the Starfighter forever. But moving on from the minifigure topic for now, we will get back to that later in this video. Let's talk about another pretty big disappointment of this year, and of course I had to talk about some of these prices, and some of them were atrocious. While we had some pretty great sets over the year and, well, some not so good ones, many sets had one thing in common: they were overpriced. The MTT was in my opinion one of the best summer sets, and it is overall a great display piece and also a cool set to play with, but it retails for roughly $160 and 150 euros, which leads to a price per piece of 16.4 cents per piece in the US and 15.4 cents per piece in Europe. The 327th Star Corps Battle Pack has a total of 8 minifigures and 258 pieces, yet it retails for roughly $45 and 40 euros, which is insanely high. This leads to a price per piece of 17.4 cents in the US and 15.5 cents in Europe. The Billable Wicket costs 12.9 cents per piece, the UCS ATST 13.2 cents, the Forceburner Snowspeeder costs 15.8 cents, and of course, how could I forget the beautiful Republic Juggernaut that comes with 813 pieces and 8 minifigures for a cheap price of roughly $160 and 150 euros. 19.7 cents per piece in the US and 18.4 cents per piece in Europe, which is just insane. And yeah, we also had some sets that were pretty fairly priced, like the Playscale Jango Fett Starship, K2SO, or even the UCS Jango Fett Starship. However, a lot of these sets feel too small for what you pay, even if they have a price per piece that is considered normal or fair. So maybe my disappointment is not really the pricing and more so the shrinkflation of modern LEGO Star Wars sets, but I just had to mention this in some form. But as I just mentioned the Republic Juggernaut, let's talk about that one for a second. Now, while I'm sure you've already heard a ton of complaints about this set, I still have to address it when talking about the biggest disappointments, right? Now, I guess the fact that the price and more so price per piece wasn't really something you would consider fair is already pretty clear when looking at the piece count of 813 pieces for the generous price of $160 US. But I want to talk about something else. The general size, stability and even choice of this model for the set is pretty weird. I know that the UT-80 is not the most popular vehicle for a $160 quote-unquote flagship set, but LEGO didn't need to do a $160 set in general. In fact, it seems like LEGO didn't want to do a Juggernaut in a size that equals this price either, because the set only comes with a little over 800 pieces. I think with this piece count you could have easily made a great UT-80 and priced the set somewhat in between $80 to $100, which I think would be fine for a more so unknown vehicle, but oh yeah, that seems too cheap for Bakara and some Galactic Marines, right? Now the stability and overall design wasn't great either, but I guess you've already seen it a dozen of times how this model collapses, so I will just quickly address this and move on. The integral structure of this model and quote-unquote backbone is laughable and not good enough for a playset, and while I do think that you likely won't pick this model up at the points where you have to see it collapsing, there still should have been a handle, and it should have in general been bigger, more sturdy, and some building techniques are pretty lackluster, like the crow's nest / lookout, which you can easily pull out as there is no stop or anything which further secures it. So yeah, this model was overall really disappointing, and I think we could have either gotten a great UT-80 or at least a better Juggernaut instead of this thing. One thing I didn't address with the Juggernaut are the minifigures. Why, you might ask? Because I genuinely think they are awesome, besides one fatal flaw that all current modern clones lack: a physical waistcape. Remember those times when LEGO Clone Troopers had some amazing kamas and some specifically created cloth pieces just for them? Yeah, those times are over, and now we get this. Yeah, it looks just as great, right? As far as I know, the general argument for this is that the minifigures can't sit with a cloth piece, to which I'd argue you can very easily just remove them, as we're talking about LEGO. But hey, I'm sure there is another great reason for that, right? Personally, I don't think there was really anybody who genuinely complained about cloth waistcapes being an issue, and if there is really someone out there who did it, I just wanna ask, why? But think about that reason for a second. Wouldn't it be funny if LEGO did choose to include cloth waistcapes in playsets that were specifically made for kids, and in minifigures that they designed themselves so they could decide if they even needed cloth pieces? Oh, they did that? The first example that I found was Izzy, or Isabel Cristina Garcia, from set 71461 Fantastical Treehouse and set number 71469 Nightmare Shark Ship, and example number 2 is Dizzy with cloth skirt from set number 71478 The Never Witch's Midnight Raven and 71486 Castle Nocturnia. Now before you all rush to the comments, I know these sets got released in 2023 and 2024, so in LEGO's defense you could argue that we're currently in a kind of transition phase and these were some older planned releases, etc. But the only thing I personally want is that my Clone Troopers start to look as beautiful and magnificent again as they used to, instead of this sad try of making something equal. Like, can we at least print the kamas around the legs instead of just printing the front, which looks ridiculous? But now let's get to the, in my opinion, last major disappointment of this year, and this is the UCS Death Star. There were a lot of things great about the set and a lot of things that I'd at least consider questionable. And while I do think that the general idea behind the set is great, and I honestly like this approach way more than the previous quote-unquote dollhouse Death Stars, some things weren't that great with this set. Starting off with the big ass sticker sheet, which shouldn't be that big for roughly $1,000, and continuing with the fact that only one minifigure in the set had dual model legs, while there were a lot of other figures that could have / should have gotten dual model legs. It feels like some corners were cut with the set, which I think is not the best idea when doing a $1,000 UCS set. By the way, it is still super funny to me that the only minifigure that has dual model legs in the set is the meme Hot Tub Stormtrooper, but yeah, enough of that for now. The GWP was also a major disappointment, as it felt like this really should have been included in the actual set, and the design was also mediocre in my opinion. So whether or not it was LEGO's intention to create the ultimate LEGO Star Wars set or not, I think you could have expected that. A lot of fans could think and expect to get that when you charge roughly $1,000. And I also do think it is fair that you want to get a set of this quality when being asked to pay $999.99. While this set wasn't bad, and I do think that it is a solid display model with a great design idea, it was still somewhat disappointing for most fans, including myself. But now this was my list of the biggest LEGO Star Wars disappointments of 2025. Do you agree with some of my takes, or do you think I'm waffling and my critique is not fair? Feel free to tell me about that and your biggest disappointment from LEGO Star Wars this year in the comments down below, as I would be very interested to hear your thoughts. Now once again, everything in this video was just my personal opinion, and I don't think that it was LEGO's intention to disappoint us. This happens pretty naturally when releasing so many products each year, but I still think it was worth mentioning and an entertaining video idea. There were a lot of great sets this year, so if you want a list of my biggest LEGO Star Wars surprises of 2025, feel free to tell me that as well. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would very much appreciate a like to support the channel. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out some of my other videos, you can see them on screen right now.